Good evening, everyone. It's Tony here from Locks to Reads. 27th of November, Remembrance Reads is almost over. Um, I I have been focusing. One of the things I've learned from doing this process is I really should concentrate on one book at a time, or at the most two, or actually at the most three, as in one poetry, one non-fiction, one fiction. Um, but really, I should concentrate on one book at a time. Um, because I think what happens is you read too bitterly if you try and read numerous books at the same time, and I think for next year's Remembrance Reads, I want to do something more focused on like actual book reviews of whole books, plus some more let's say ambitious videos. I'd like to do one on London War Memorials. Actually, on war memorials in general, but on London war memorials, which is going to be the easy ones I can get to most easily with the least amount of money being spent. Which is going to require me to learn how to edit and to learn how to film properly, rather than doing these half-assed home videos. But that's for next year, and there'll be more lessons I'll be learning. What I'm also going to do for next year, and I'm going to start doing this from next month as a thing, is I have a blogger account that I can add new blogs to. It's mostly I use it for my Doctor Who blogs, but I'm going to do one for my reading as well, and I'm going to use that as a sort of resource going forward. So once I've sort of set that up and running, I won't start it. I might do one on lessons I've learnt from Remembrance Reads as the first one, and then maybe do something in December, maybe something weekly on what I'm reading or things about that I've learnt and things I'm catching up on. So the last couple of days I've been focusing on one book, which is Blindfold and Alone, a British military executions in the Great War, by Cathryn and John Hughes-Wilson. It was published in, I think, 2001 originally, and this is the Casal military paperback edition from 2005. This is, as it says, about the the controversial policy of executions in the British Army during World War One. This book is great. I have to say, it's. I don't like using the phrase myth busting because that always sounds glib, and but this is a very good an attempt to tell the story by taking out some of the more obvious contemporary emotional stuff from it. It doesn't do it entirely, but it's very factual. It's very carefully sourced, and it has changed my mind on a number of things, or my perceptions. I think there's a perception that the courts martial were like General Melchit's court martial of Blackadder, in the episode where Blackadder shoots his pigeon, that they were effectively kangaroo courts, and this book does a great job of making it obvious that that wasn't the case. It also does a good job of establishing that. Basically the part one is basically contextualizes what is to come. So it talks about the Britain in 1914, the history and development of military law as it was in 1914, mental health in Britain in 1914, the shock of battle, shell shock, a brief history, shell shock of the Great War, and military law in action, which is the first sort of summary. And then part two is more specific cases. For example, I always assumed that most people were shot for cowardice, but actually that's not the case. The most people were shot for desertion and not cowardice. Cowardice is actually quite hard to prove. So they were often prosecuted for desertion rather than cowardice. and 37 of the people shot were shot for murder, which they would have been executed for in Britain at the time. Anyway, they would have been hung rather than shot. Um, and also, I had assumed that the stats were much higher in terms of numbers, but I'll sort of summarise the end of the first section. I'm about 2/3 of the way through. It says here 5,250,000 men served in the British Army of the First World War, of whom 750,000 were killed and 1,500,000 wounded. And during the period from the 4th of August 1914 to October 1918, there were approximately 238,000 courts-martial. That 238,000, 3,080 led to death sentences, and of those death sentences, only 346 were actually carried out. And they break down, and I'm going to read this out because I think this is interesting. Mutiny 3, desertion 266, cowardice 18, disobedience of a lawful order 5, sleeping at post 2, striking a superior officer 6, casting away arms 2, quitting post 7, and murder 37. Which is interesting. So, and it also says in here there were 551 courts-martial for cowardice, with 3.3% resulting in execution. There were 7,371 for desertion, 3.6% of which were executed. Those numbers were much smaller than I thought, and I thought basically the numbers were in their hundreds and hundreds. And it's also very good on the process of how, once a death sentence was passed, how it had to pass through a number of different officers before it was confirmed. It's a brilliant, really, really good book. I'm really glad I picked it up and read it. It wasn't on my initial list of books to read. Typical Tony Cross, by deciding that the list that you put onto Excel that you spent ages deciding on should be something else entirely. I will probably finish Blindfold and Alone tomorrow, and then the weekend is going to be spent reading a couple of other things. Not sure which, and I'm going to try and watch over the course of the weekend these two films from the 30s. I think. Where are we? 1930. Yeah, 1930-31. These are West Front 1918 and Kameradschaft, which are directed by George Pabst. The first one is an out and out World War One film. The second one is a sort of post-war film that tries to talk about countries working together. It's about a mining accident on the border, I think the French or Belgian border, and German miners come to help trying to rescue the French miners. It's little in that sense. It's as a plea for working together for unity. It's a bit like why can't I remember the name of the film? Anyway, doesn't matter. But I'm going to try and watch those over the weekend as well. So that's where we are. This will be short, this video, because I've been concentrating on that one book. I really genuinely recommend it if you can get hold of a copy. I got mine from the library, as you can see. It's a tough read in some respects because there are cases where you do feel that a modern understanding of post-traumatic stress disorder would have led to people not being executed. But there are a number of those cases where you read it and you think, well, from a military discipline point of view, these people have been given X number of chances, and would you have for the maintenance of military discipline in a front line? I mean, it's hard to talk about it now because in the 21st century, in 2025, it seems insane that you'd shoot soldiers for being afraid or desertion. But in a war, there is a line that you have to draw, and the French army mutinied on a large scale, and the British army didn't. And although I think the French actually shot as many, if not more, than the British army, the Germans didn't, according to their record. But what happens I don't know how it works in either. They are mentioned briefly in that book. I'm waffling now, so I will stop. This was just a short update. I will update you tomorrow when I finish Blindfold and Alone. Touch wood. Yeah, have a good one. I am feeling much better, as you can tell. My mood has sort of lifted a bit, and I'm feeling a much happier person. Yeah, there we go. Have a good one.